back to the hotel to take the call, I was talking to one of the franchise partners, and we were talking about his other FBC. And his other FBC for the other brand he's with literally comes in and tells him how he sucks all the time and doesn't have any kind of support systems in place as it relates to like education or anything like that. Sorry, I keep moving this. Or anything like that. And that's one of the things he appreciates about me. You know, I go in and it's more of an educational visit. It's not a punch in the throat and then walk out. And he's like, you know, Bruce, that's something I appreciate about you. And I was like, man, you know, that's what I try to do. I try to make sure those guys have some sense of calm relationship with me. Mm-hmm. Because I'm telling you, you go in there and you beat those kids up, they're going to cry. And then every time you come in, they're like, oh, corporate's here. I don't want to be corporate. I just want to be Roussos. That's it.
I used to do that when I was a younger manager. I had this one district manager and he had a routine. Like he had his schedule down to like a science. So I knew what day he was coming in. I knew what hour he was coming in. I knew everything. And the only thing he ever said when he got there is everything we were doing wrong. Didn't matter what we were doing right. Didn't matter like what we accomplished, how our inventory was, like whatever. Nothing mattered except what he found that was wrong. So when he'd come in, he'd always go straight to the salsa bar, grab a napkin. He'd run that napkin along the top of like the sneeze guard. Then he'd walk around. He'd go to the soda fountain. He'd take that napkin and wipe the nozzles to see if they were clean. And then from there, he'd walk directly over to the beer bin and he'd check to see if the beer bin was good. If all of that was good, he would go straight into the office, hang out in there for a couple minutes, looking at like our logbook, our temperature checks and all that stuff. Then he'd say something to me and then he'd leave. He'd never go past the office if the soda fountain was clean and the salsa bar looked good and the beer bin was, you know, straight. So every Tuesday before he would come in, I would have somebody on my team like go make sure that everything was perfect. But there's the thing, like looking back on it, it wasn't that I needed it just perfect for him that one day. Like it was obviously something we took care of every single day. But if we didn't want him to bother us, like we had to make sure it was done. So like we adjusted our behavior so we didn't have to hear his feedback. And the only thing we learned was how to avoid him. That was it.
I can see that. I can see that in other younger leaders too. You know, they get to the point where I know what he's going to check. So I don't care if there's trash in the corner. He's not going to check that. He's going to check this, this, and this.
Yeah. And usually if there's trash in the corner, you probably know your dining room has to be cleaned up or whatever. But maybe you're down 2 people, you're short staffed. And when you prioritized all the things you needed to do right now, you know, like picking up that tables, you know, busting that table wasn't the first priority on your list.
Right.
Then he walks through the door and he's like giving you a hard time because your table's not done. So at that point, you don't have respect for the person coming in and you end up playing like a cop. Like he's just a cop. He's just coming in to like catch me doing something wrong. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're not the police when you come in and talk to the leadership or the restaurant team. Like you're going in there as somebody who's looking to help them, check on them, see how they're doing, like offer them, you know, whatever support they need. Like not going in there and just, you know, tearing them down. And I don't think it's because you don't tell them what they're doing wrong. It's because you're telling them what they're doing wrong, but you're also making comments and telling them all the things that they're doing right.
And I think that's where, you know, I think you and I talked about this before, the tough conversations, that piece right there, that guy just, or that girl, whichever it was, just didn't want to have those conversations. So they came in, they blast you and they walk out, you know. But, you know, when you talk about the conversations, like I go into the stores as an FBC and I kind of have a plan. Like they all know when I go in that I'm going to set the computer down and then I'm going to go say hello to everybody. And as I'm walking around, I'm just kind of mentally preparing for what I'm going to do. You know, very positive, make sure I have a very happy, positive, respectful dialogue. There's a lot of things that go on that you just don't know about. So when you talk to these guys, you have to have a sense of empathy as to what's going on. And some of the FBCs don't really understand because they've never actually been in ops. So for me, if you talk to any of my other franchise partners, they know I come from the corporate side. So, somebody mentioned this on one of our conference calls, and I kind of giggled when he said this because it was like, James has street cred. And the street cred is the fact that I've been on the corporate ops side of things where I understand. I have empathy for him. I listen to him and say, you know what, I get it. I totally understand this was what happened, and I understand what happens when this happens. It's a cascading effect of negativity. I don't want to say negativity in the sense of bad, but just one thing causes another thing. It's like we learned when we were young, cause and effect. That's kind of what happens. Two people don't show up. You don't get the truck put away. The truck doesn't get put away. You don't get prep put on time. There's a lot of stuff that just kind of cascades there. So you have to have some sort of empathy when you go into the stores, and you have these conversations, listen to them, understand them, and then give them the feedback. Focus on the solutions. Don't have this, you suck type of thing.